And good morning, afternoon. We are getting ready to head down for a live press conference with the Anchorage Police Department about an officer-involved shooting from Friday night.
I want to start the day before the officer-involved shooting on August 23rd, just so I can give you a little bit of background and kind of a wider lens view of kind of the events that unfolded in the afternoon last Friday. So on August 22nd, just after 10 a.m., officers responded to an incident near the 1000 block of East 5th, which later turned into a homicide investigation. Crime scene team responded, detectives started investigating that crime, and over the next 24 plus hours, detectives developed some information regarding that homicide. Some of the information was a name of a suspect, and some information also included that this particular suspect was not going to get arrested without having a shootout with officers. Because of that information, on the 23rd, the day of the officer-involved shooting, right about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we made the decision that we would pull patrol back from looking for this particular suspect due to the heightened risk, and we would use a team called Investigative Support Unit that's made up of some of our Special Weapons and Tactics team members. They have specialized training, skills, equipment that are available to them, and their whole purpose is try to resolve situations that are considered high risk with the least amount of force possible because of that specialized training and equipment and tools that they have. Just after 4 p.m. on the 23rd is when we received the call into dispatch. Now, this call came from a third party. The third party was asked to call 911 by two homeless individuals because they were being chased by somebody who they said had a gun. The third party relayed that information to dispatch, and the third party also passed on to dispatch that they observed some of the activity that was occurring, and that to them it did in fact look like the suspect was chasing these two homeless individuals. Now, when officers arrived on the scene, they made contact with the caller. While they were talking to the caller, she pointed out the suspect that was outside in front of the business, and that's what led officers to make contact with the suspect after he fled on his bicycle for a short period of time. And just to kind of go over again what I talked about on Friday so that we're clear on what happened during the exchange between the officers and the suspect. When the officers caught up to the suspect, he got off of his bike. Officers started providing commands to the suspect, at which time they observed a gun. They called out that they saw a gun, and then they continued to provide commands to the suspect. And then the suspect pointed and fired a single round. That caused the officer that fired his weapon to fire 5 rounds from his gun. The suspect went down to the ground. The suspect then sat up and fired an additional 2 rounds. And that caused the officer to fire 5 additional rounds, so 10 total rounds, which ended the suspect from firing. 2 of the rounds that the suspect fired from his handgun struck a civilian vehicle, and the direction of the fire was not only in direction of that civilian vehicle, but another officer that was in the same line of fire. I want to talk just a bit about the decision, generally speaking, to use deadly force that our officers make. It's important to understand that most officer-involved shootings typically take place between 3 and 6 feet. This particular officer-involved shooting was at a much greater distance. I won't give you the exact distance on that just yet. And when we think about an officer observing things in a very short, compressed time, seeing a weapon being pulled out and then pointed in the direction of another human being, they have less than a second to determine what that object is and to make the decision to fire their weapon to prevent harm from being done from, in this case, the public as well as an officer. That decision to take that shot, once that decision is made, the officer doesn't get to take that back. Our officers replay this decision over and over for months and months following the officer-involved shootings. What they could have done to prepare themselves better, different tactics, was it the right decision? And they replay this over and over in their mind so they can perform the absolute best in that split second that they have to be involved in these officer-involved shootings. I often speak about the well-being of our officers and the community. The information that I'm putting out today is part of taking care of the well-being of our community. It is important that we continue to show our community some of the thought processes that we try to mitigate the risk to the public and the need to use force. The well-being of our officers is also a priority. We demand that they run towards gunfire and danger without hesitation. I can promise you that they do just that. Our officers continue to demonstrate how much they care about this community's safety by never hesitating in these situations. I am grateful to lead such remarkable officers. They truly are my heroes. And with that, I will take some questions. Yes, Tess?
Hi, I am just wondering if you guys are planning to identify the suspect and why you haven't done so already.
So, as I mentioned multiple times, the suspect's a suspect in a homicide that occurred the day before. And as we pull that investigation together and start moving towards indictment, that's when that information will come out. And so we just want to preserve a little bit of that investigation until we're ready to move forward to indictment.
Are any charges filed at this point?
They're not filed at this point.
Johnson Kuhn, Alaska's News Source. Along with the suspect's name, I assume you'll be sharing the condition as well?
Generally, we update, generally don't provide additional medical information on the status. What we normally put out at the very beginning is if the individual that was shot is survived or is transported to a nearby hospital.
Any information you can share about the adult male victim at this time?
From
Thursday?
From the August, no. I'll come back to you, Tess.
Jeremy Shea, Alaska Public Media. Can you say at all shed any more light on what the relationship between the murder suspect, the murder victim, and the homeless camp were, if any?
I don't have any additional information to share on that just yet. We will be able to update when we move forward with charges if we get to that point.
And can you clarify, the officers who are on that SWAT sub-team that you used, those were the officers that responded on Friday and engaged with the suspect? Or
No, once the call came into dispatch, now we have to, patrol has to respond to that. And I think that's one of the important things to understand is that we wanted investigative support unit to respond because of their skills. But once we get a call for service that says, we have something that's an active threat, immediate for officers to respond to, patrol division is going to go handle that call.
You mentioned that two of the shots from the suspect struck a civilian vehicle. Was that vehicle occupied?
Yes, it was.
And then, do you have any information about if the suspect knew Carl Washington or how they may have known each other?
I don't have that information right now.
Time for one more? Okay, thank you everybody for coming, appreciate it.
And that was Chief Sean Case from the Anchorage Police Department giving us an update on the officer-involved shooting from Friday night. That is the 7th officer-involved shooting for this year so far. Now, according to Chief Case, there was an homicide investigation that started on August 22nd. They were receiving information that the person that was the suspect was not going to come in without, as they said, a shootout with police. And so he said they pulled back the patrol from looking for this person, and they called in the investigative support unit to look over it. But before that team could respond, there was a 911 call from a person saying that 2 homeless people had asked them to call the police for them, saying they were being chased by a person with a gun. Patrol responded, and they made contact with the person, the suspect from that homicide on Thursday, that same individual. They say that he shot once toward police. An officer returned fire and shot 5 times. The person went down, sat up, shot twice again in the direction of a civilian vehicle and another police officer, and the officer fired an additional 5 shots. And he kind of gave some information about the thought process that goes behind use of force, and said that it takes less than a second. They have less than a second to make a decision about what the person is doing, about how dangerous the object a person has in their hand. And he was trying to show some of the processes that people go through. So we will continue to follow this as the story moves forward. We'll have more details as they come available on alaskasnewssource.com. So please watch there, of course, at 4, 5, 6, and 10 on Alaska's News Source.